There's no white privilege with regard to style of dress. Because here's the reality. If you sag your pants and somebody says to you, pull up your pants, and you're a white guy, nobody says a word. If you sag your pants and you're black and somebody says to you, pull up your pants, you will be called a racist. Right? This has actually happened. Okay, so that being the case, let's actually talk about what is provable and what is not provable, and what accusations have been leveraged and which ones are actually supportable. Okay, first of all, statistical disparity does not necessarily mean discrimination. This is the first thing you need to know. Okay? Anybody who's ever been in a statistics class knows that this is true. Right? If they still teach statistics and it's not too much of a microaggression. So statistical disparity does not always mean discrimination. Right? The vast majority of people who play in the NBA are black. Very few of them are 5'9" Jews. Right? That is not because there is some sort of anti-Semitic conspiracy to keep 5'9" Jews out of the National Basketball Association. I mean, I can't complain that I don't play for the Los Angeles Lakers, right? This is because the reality is that in America, it tends to be, just as a general principle, meritocracy rules. That's true from the NBA to the halls of academia, and it is certainly true on college campuses. Okay, so let's go through some of the accusations that have been made about white skin privilege. So financial responsibility, right? So this particular author, she said that one of the things that works against you if you're black in the United States is how people perceive your financial responsibility. Okay, first thing to say here, capitalism is colorblind. The only color that capitalism cares about is green. Okay, capitalism seriously doesn't care about your color, it doesn't care about your race, it doesn't care about your sexuality. In fact, capitalism is the single best way to overcome racism and sexism and bigotry and homophobia, because if you decide to be any of these things, if you decide to be a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, the guy next door will not, and he will take all of that money from you. You will be outcompeted. This is the beautiful thing about capitalism. Your advantage in the marketplace is catering to as many clients as possible and to hiring the best people possible. Okay, style of dress. We talk about white privilege with regard to style of dress. Okay, seriously, this is nonsense. If there's no white privilege with regard to style of dress. Because here's the reality. If you sag your pants and somebody says to you, pull up your pants, and you're a white guy, nobody says a word. If you sag your pants and you're black and somebody says to you, pull up your pants, you will be called a racist. Right? This has actually happened. David Stern, if you remember, who was the head of the NBA, it was implied and actually said in many cases that he was racist for suggesting that people in the NBA ought to dress in nice suits. It turned out that everybody eventually took him up on that, and now NBA players are the best dressed people on planet Earth. But the fact is that style of dress is not an aspect of white privilege. Public speaking skills. They say, well, you know, when it comes to public speaking skills, then white people have an advantage. President Obama is not nearly as articulate as the press would have you believe. Okay, President Obama is not more articulate than John Edwards was, but according to the media, he was the most articulate man who ever lived. He made Jesus look like a piker. President Obama was the greatest speaker in the history of the world. And part of that was because the media gave him affirmative action points. They did. Because if anybody said the sort of inarticulate things that President Obama has said routinely when he's off teleprompter, they'd be raked over the coals for it. Job performance, right? They say there's discrimination in job performance, and this is white privilege. Right? The fact is that Mizzou has affirmative action in its hiring processes. There are already laws on the books that bar discrimination based on race in hiring. There's already a federal Equal Employment Opportunity Commission that investigates charges of racism on a routine basis. It has a program. It's called E-Race, Eradicating Racism and Colorism in Employment. It's designed to fight discrimination against people of color. That is not white privilege. That is the government going out of its way to attempt to fight individual racists and, in some cases, go beyond the evidence in order to demonstrate racism. The idea that, especially on college campuses, that black folks on college campuses, people of color on college campuses are suffering from some unspecified white privilege, really talk to the Asian guy who has to score 230 points above the black guy in order to get in the same college before you tell me about white privilege. Okay, the fact is that affirmative action programs across the country, de facto and not de facto and in law as well, all of these programs are specifically created in order to get ethnic minority students with lower SAT scores into the building. Okay, if it's white privilege to sit on the side because you can't go to college because the black guy took your slot because he had a lower SAT score, and it didn't matter that he grew up rich and you grew up poor, right? If that's white privilege, then nobody would want to be a member of the white privileged class.